the Lantern of Constantinople. The morning sun rose over the sprawling city of Constantinople, spilling golden light across the domes and spires of churches, palaces, and bustling marketplaces. Young Theo adjusted the strap of his satchel as he stepped down from the riverboat. The smell of salt from the Bosphorus mixing with the faint aroma of baked bread and fresh herbs. He had traveled for days from a distant village to see the famed city for the first time, a city where East met West. And centuries of stories seemed to linger in the stones, in the air, and in the gentle rhythm of life. The streets were alive yet serene. The hustle of merchants, traders, and travelers flowing with a natural rhythm. Vendors displayed vibrant fabrics, rare spices, and glimmering coins changed hands quietly. Theo marveled at the richness of the sights and sounds, the calls of fishmongers blending with the clip-clop of horses on cobblestone streets, the soft murmurs of scholars discussing texts on benches shaded by olive trees, and the occasional melody of a lute carried by a wandering musician. Each sound, each smell, each movement seemed to whisper secrets of centuries past. He wandered past aqueducts with trickling water that seemed to sing softly, their stones darkened with age. He paused at a small fountain where children splashed playfully, their laughter light and echoing, mixing with the calls of merchants nearby. Theo's eyes followed the flight of pigeons that wheeled above the great Hagia Sophia, whose domes rose majestically, reflecting the sun in their golden mosaics. He imagined the countless emperors, soldiers, traders, and scholars who had walked these streets before him, and he felt a shiver of connection to this living history. By mid-morning, he reached the hippodrome, empty now, but echoing faintly with imagined cheers. The marble spina stretched before him, its intricate carvings worn smooth over centuries. He could almost hear the rhythmic pounding of hooves, the murmured strategies of charioteers, the cheers of crowds, and the soft footsteps of visitors long gone. Nearby, an old lantern hung from a weathered post, brass catching the sunlight, its glow long extinguished in the day, but still hinting at the warm light that once guided travelers safely through the city at night. Theo continued through narrow alleyways lined with stone houses, each doorway and window seeming to hold its own story. A small bakery emitted a warm, yeasty scent, and he paused to watch a baker carefully shape bread before placing it into the hearth. Nearby, a scholar stepped quietly, scrolls tucked under his arm, disappearing into a shaded courtyard where orange trees rustled softly in the breeze. Theo felt as though the city itself was breathing around him, alive with quiet movement, carrying the weight of centuries with gentle grace. By late afternoon, he arrived at the great Hagia Sophia. Its immense dome soared above, seeming to float as though held by invisible hands. Light poured through the stained glass windows, casting soft, multicolored patterns across the marble floors. He wandered inside, his footsteps echoing lightly. Every column, every mosaic, every carved detail seemed to whisper fragments of the past. The prayers of emperors, the chanting of monks, the gentle hum of artisans shaping stone and gold. Theo closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside, mingled with the faint echoes inside the great cathedral. As evening approached, the sky deepened into soft shades of rose and violet. Theo found a quiet inn near the harbor, where the gentle sway of boats and the soft lapping of waves became a comforting lullaby. The innkeeper welcomed him with a nod and a warm meal of bread, olives, and roasted vegetables. Sitting by the window, Theo watched lanterns flicker to life across the harbor, their golden light reflecting on the rippling water. He thought of the lanterns scattered through the city, each one a small beacon in the growing twilight, guiding travelers, signaling safety, and illuminating streets that had witnessed centuries of human stories. Before sleep, Theo took a walk along the quiet docks. The city had settled into a soft hum, the sounds of commerce replaced by the gentle lapping of the Bosphorus. Fishermen cleaned nets, their movements rhythmic and slow, while distant bells tolled from the churches, echoing across the water. Theo paused at the edge of the harbor, inhaling the cool, salty air, and felt a calm settle over him. Constantinople, with its towering domes, narrow alleys, and whispered histories, seemed to reach out and embrace him, inviting him into its timeless rhythm. He returned to the inn, laying his head on a soft pillow, the distant glow of the city lanterns casting warm shadows across the room. As he drifted toward sleep, he dreamed of the city in its grandeur, the markets, the scholars, the domes and arches, and the gentle lapping of waves against the stone piers. It was a city alive with memory and magic, a city that had endured centuries, and now welcomed a new visitor into its quiet, eternal heartbeat. Sleep finally came, slow and gentle, carrying with it dreams of the streets, the lanterns, and the warm, golden glow of Constantinople at twilight. The next morning, Theo awoke to the soft clatter of dishes and distant voices drifting through the inn. Sunlight spilled through the window, illuminating the wooden beams of the ceiling and the rough stone floor. Today, he had decided, he would explore the quieter corners of Constantinople, the hidden courtyards, libraries, and gardens whispered about by the innkeeper last night. The city was alive with subtle rhythms that could only be felt by wandering slowly, noticing the gentle patterns beneath the bustling surface. Theo set out with his satchel swinging at his side, passing through narrow streets where merchants arranged baskets of figs, olives, and pomegranates. The air was scented with fresh bread, herbs, and the salty tang of the harbor. Children darted between the legs of passers-by, their laughter soft and melodic, echoing faintly off the tall stone walls. Theo paused to watch an elderly man sweep the steps outside his home, moving in quiet, deliberate strokes that mirrored centuries of custom. There was something hypnotic in the small, patient acts of daily life, and Theo felt a connection to generations of people who had lived and worked in the same spaces. By mid-morning, Theo reached a secluded courtyard tucked between two tall stone buildings. A small garden thrived here, protected from the bustle of the streets. Orange trees swayed gently in the breeze, their blossoms fragrant, and a small fountain trickled quietly in the center. An elderly scholar sat at a stone bench, scrolls and books stacked neatly around him. His hair was white, and his eyes held the calm certainty of a life devoted to study. Theo hesitated a moment, then approached. "Good morning," Theo said softly, not wishing to startle the man. The scholar looked up, smiling gently. "Good morning, young traveler. What brings you to this quiet corner of Constantinople?" "I've come to see the city," Theo replied. "To learn, and perhaps to understand the stories of those who lived here before me." The scholar nodded. "Then you have come to the right place. This city has many secrets, many whispers from the past. Some are written in stone and ink. Others are quieter, carried in the air, in the light, in the rhythm of daily life." Theo sat nearby as the scholar began to share tales of Constantinople's history. He spoke of emperors and scholars, of battles and treaties, of libraries filled with scrolls from across the known world. He described the great Hagia Sophia, with its mosaics and domes, explaining how architects and artisans had combined Byzantine and Eastern influences to create something eternal, a structure meant to inspire awe and reflection. But the scholar's favorite story, he explained, was that of the Lantern of Constantinople. Many years ago, during a particularly harsh winter, a massive storm had descended upon the city. Ships were lost in the harbor, and travelers were stranded in the dark streets. A single lantern, placed atop the harbor's lighthouse, had guided countless people safely home. The lantern became a symbol not only of guidance, but of resilience and hope, of the city itself watching over its inhabitants through centuries of hardship. Theo listened enraptured as the scholar's voice carried a quiet rhythm, steady and comforting. He imagined the stormy nights, the dark streets, and the warm glow of the lantern shining through fog and rain, a beacon for weary travelers. It was not just a story of survival, but a story of connection, of generations reaching out, caring for one another across the passage of time. As the afternoon waned, the scholar rose and motioned to Theo. "Would you like to see the lantern itself?" he asked. Theo's heart quickened. They walked together toward the harbor, where the great lighthouse stood tall, its stone walls worn smooth by centuries of wind and waves. The lantern, perched at the top, caught the sunlight, casting a soft golden glow even in the afternoon. The scholar explained how it had been tended carefully through the ages, how its flame symbolized both guidance and knowledge, a quiet constant in a world that was always changing. Theo traced the stone steps up to the lantern's base, running his fingers along the carved patterns. He imagined the countless hands that had done the same, the whispered prayers of travelers, the careful tending of the flame by watchmen long gone. Standing there, he felt a profound connection, not just to Constantinople, but to humanity itself, to the lives lived and remembered, to the shared experiences that outlasted individual lifetimes. The sun began to set, painting the harbor in shades of rose and gold. Theo watched the lantern catch the light, imagining how it would shine through the night, a beacon of hope for anyone lost or weary. The scholar smiled, as if reading Theo's thoughts. "Remember," he said softly, "the city is always speaking if you take the time to listen. Its stories are quiet, but they are eternal." Theo returned to the inn that evening, walking slowly, savoring the sounds of the streets, the gentle lapping of the waves, and the soft glow of lanterns lighting the city. He felt a calm settle over him, the rhythm of Constantinople weaving itself into his mind, a gentle lullaby of history and life. As he drifted to sleep that night, he dreamed of lanterns shining across stormy waters, of scholars and travelers, of streets that had seen centuries of stories unfold. And in that dream, the city whispered softly, inviting him to listen, to remember, and to rest. The following morning, Theo awoke to a soft golden light spilling through the inn's window. The harbor beyond shimmered gently under the rising sun, and the distant calls of merchants and fishermen created a calm rhythm to accompany his thoughts. Today, he felt drawn deeper into the heart of Constantinople, beyond the bustling streets and grand plazas, to the hidden corners where stories of the city's past were whispered quietly through stone and shadow. He wandered along narrow alleyways lined with time-worn buildings. Some were adorned with faded mosaics, others with carved inscriptions that had been softened by centuries of wind and rain. Theo paused often, tracing the patterns with his fingers, imagining the hands that had carved them, the voices that had spoken here long ago. Every corner seemed to hold a secret, every courtyard a memory suspended between the past and present. Mid-morning, he stumbled upon a small, almost imperceptible doorway set into the side of a building. The arch was low and worn, the hinges ancient but solid. Curiosity tugged at him. He gently pushed the door open and discovered a narrow passage leading downward, dimly lit by small openings in the walls that let in scattered rays of sunlight. The air smelled faintly of old stone and earth, carrying a sense of quiet history that felt almost sacred. As Theo descended, he realized he had discovered one of the city's hidden passages, long forgotten by most, known only to scholars and caretakers who remembered the old ways. The passage twisted gently, lined with niches where small lanterns once rested, their glow guiding travelers safely through the winding corridors. The stone walls seemed to hum softly, as if the passage itself remembered the countless people who had passed through over centuries. He imagined the footsteps of merchants carrying goods, of scholars clutching scrolls, of ordinary citizens seeking refuge during times of unrest. Each step he took echoed lightly, blending with the soft murmur of the wind outside and the faint trickle of water running through small channels carved into the stones. Theo felt a serene connection to the lives that had come before him, a quiet awareness that history was not merely something in books, but a living, breathing presence in these very walls. At the end of the passage, Theo entered a small chamber, simple yet dignified. Stone benches lined the walls, and in the center stood a pedestal with a single, well-polished lantern resting atop it. It gleamed softly in the dim light, the brass surface worn smooth by centuries of hands. A small plaque, engraved in Old Greek script, described how this lantern had been tended by watchmen and scholars alike, guiding travelers and symbolizing the city's enduring wisdom. Theo ran his fingers along the brass, imagining the lantern glowing on stormy nights, a steadfast beacon in times of uncertainty. He sat quietly, listening to the passage around him, allowing the calm rhythm of the city's heartbeat to fill his senses. In the distance, he could hear faint echoes of life above the markets awakening, the soft calls of boatmen along the harbor, the distant tolling of church bells marking the hour. And yet, in this hidden chamber, there was a profound silence, a gentle space where past and present intertwined seamlessly. Time seemed to slow. Theo's mind drifted, carried by images of scholars poring over scrolls by lantern light, families finding warmth and guidance in the glow, and travelers stepping cautiously yet confidently through winding streets. He realized that the city's history was not only in monumental palaces and grand churches, but also in these quiet spaces, these hidden passages where human lives intertwined with centuries of memory and care. Hours passed softly. Theo eventually rose and retraced his steps through the passage, feeling the cool stone beneath his hands and the faint warmth of sunlight filtering through the small openings. Emerging once more into the bustling streets, he carried with him a sense of serenity, the calm understanding that he was connected to generations of people who had walked these paths, guided by the gentle glow of lanterns and the rhythm of life in Constantinople. That evening, Theo returned to his inn, watching as the city prepared for nightfall. Lanterns were lit across the streets, their warm light reflecting on the rippling waters of the harbor. Fishermen moored their boats, merchants closed stalls, and a calm hush spread across the city as stars began to appear in the clear evening sky. Theo felt the gentle pulse of history surrounding him, a soft, steady rhythm that promised comfort, continuity, and quiet reflection. He settled near the window of the inn, watching the lanterns flicker across the harbor. The story of the hidden passage, the scholars, and the steadfast lantern lingered in his mind. Slowly, the gentle hum of the city, the soft lapping of the Bosphorus, and the distant call of bells carried him toward sleep. He dreamed of winding passages, glowing lanterns, and centuries of people walking side by side through history, each connected by the same city that now cradled him in its calm embrace. The next morning, Theo awoke to a soft, pearly light filtering through the inn's curtains. The harbor glistened quietly, each ripple of water catching the sun's reflection like scattered jewels. Today, he felt drawn to the heart of the city once more, not merely to see its sights, but to truly feel its rhythm, to sense the living story of Constantinople through the eyes of those who had walked its streets for centuries. He wandered slowly, passing familiar alleys now bathed in a gentle morning glow. Merchants were arranging their goods, the scent of fresh bread and honey filling the air, and the soft trill of birds seemed to accompany his footsteps. Theo paused at the fountain in the quiet courtyard he had discovered on his first day. Water trickled softly over smooth stones, creating a gentle, almost musical rhythm that reminded him of the city's heartbeat, a rhythm both constant and ever-changing, carrying stories from the past into the present. As mid-morning approached, Theo returned to the harbor, where the great lighthouse and its eternal lantern stood tall. The brass gleamed in the sunlight, polished smooth by centuries of watchful hands. He remembered the scholar's words. The lantern was not merely a guide for travelers, but a symbol of endurance, hope, and the enduring connection between past and present. Standing there, Theo felt a profound sense of peace, as though he were a part of something much larger than himself. He wandered along the stone pier, noticing the rhythm of the city in motion, the boats swaying gently in the water, fishermen tying knots in their nets, merchants calling softly to one another, and children laughing as they chased one another along the quay. Each sound, each movement, seemed to echo the centuries that had shaped this city, a melody that carried both calm and vitality. Theo realized that Constantinople's story was not merely in the grand monuments, but in these quiet, human moments, unfolding day after day. By afternoon, Theo found himself near a small, forgotten courtyard tucked behind the market. Here, the air smelled of jasmine and citrus, and orange trees shaded worn stone benches. He sat for a while, listening to the soft hum of life around him. Above, the sun filtered through leaves, casting dappled patterns on the stone floor. The city seemed to whisper around him, stories of generations who had lived, loved, studied, and dreamed in the same spaces he now occupied. As evening drew near, Theo returned to the lighthouse one final time. The sky had deepened to shades of rose and indigo, and lanterns throughout the city flickered to life, their warm glow reflecting softly on the water. He stood before the eternal lantern, imagining the countless people it had guided, travelers arriving on stormy nights, scholars seeking wisdom, citizens finding safety and comfort. The lantern had witnessed centuries, a steadfast presence through the city's triumphs and trials. Its light, a gentle reminder of continuity and care. Theo rested a hand lightly on the lantern's brass surface, feeling its smooth warmth. He thought of the hidden passage, the quiet courtyards, and the scholar who had shared the stories of the past. All these places, these moments, were connected by the gentle light of the lantern, a thread weaving the city's living history together. In that quiet moment, he understood that the city's heartbeat was eternal, flowing softly through stone and water, through laughter and whispers, and through the calm moments that connected one day to the next. Night fell fully, and Theo walked slowly back to the inn, lanterns flickering along the streets to guide him. the city settled into a gentle hush, with only the soft lapping of water, the distant toll of bells, and the occasional murmur of night travelers filling the air. He climbed the stairs to his room and gazed out over the harbor, watching the reflections of lanterns dance on the rippling surface. Each light seemed to pulse with a quiet story, each shadow a memory carried through time. As he lay down on his soft pillow, Theo closed his eyes and let the gentle rhythm of the city lull him into sleep. He dreamed of lanterns glowing in dark corridors, of scholars whispering ancient secrets, of quiet courtyards filled with soft light, and of the city's heartbeat flowing steadily through every street, every stone, every life. Constantinople, timeless and enduring, embraced him in its calm, eternal rhythm. And in that dream, Theo understood that he was never truly alone. The city, its people, its lanterns, and its history were with him, guiding him gently through the night, carrying him safely into rest. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories to fall asleep to.